Hey, it's Keith from Outlaw Speed Shop, and this week I am tackling another 1962 Chevy pickup. This is a mix match of parts that I'm going to be using from Benchwerk Toys, and there'll be a link to that down in the description down below. But you can see the chassis that I'm working on right now that will be integrated into this casting. I did do one of these not too long ago. This was the end result. This time I'm actually cutting the entire bed off, and hopefully it'll be a little different but better. Other than that, this is where I'm at. So this project was one that I've been wanting to do since I finished the last one. I had some issues, not issues, but it was a little bit of a challenge trying to get it in to get the wheels to clear for keeping the bed on. So this time I figured I would try taking the bed off and give it a little bit different look, feel, and just kind of see what else I could do with this. So this is a straight Hot Wheels casting. Nothing fancy about it whatsoever. It's the primer black with purple flames and the purple windscreen, which I will eventually get rid of. Just one of those things that I hated cutting open another one, and I should have just started with a different casting. This one was loose, and I just figured I'd go ahead and start with it. But either way, they all get cut up eventually. So you can see right here, I'm pretty much just cutting it right behind the B-pillar, just essentially where the bed would normally get cut off, maybe a 16th, maybe an 1/8 past it so I can grind it down smooth. I'm using my cutoff wheel, but you can use a jeweler's saw or whatever it is that makes you feel good about cutting things. I happen to like the cutoff disc for majority of my work, just because it makes short work of things. So the easy part was pretty much just cutting it. Then you just want to file it down, or in this case, sand it down, grind it smooth, and that way you don't cut yourself and you get a nice flat surface to work with. So this is, again, something I haven't done, so I'm trying to figure out the best way to go about this, and I apologize, this video is a little long, but there was no way to get all the steps in and keep it under 10-12 minutes like I normally do. You can see right now that already this is wider, and that's on purpose. It's not a big deal. Pretty much just have to grind the sides down, and then you will have to grind the dashboard a little bit of an angle to accept the windshield and be able to go up a little higher in the actual casting itself. Stuff is really great plastic. For a 3D printed part, it's super strong, easy to work with. It really a lot of flexibility as far as being able to grind it, not worry about breaking or anything like that. It's very, very strong. Definitely well worth the price. So you can see I tried fitting it. Obviously, you want to grind a little bit at a time and not go crazy. I'd rather grind a little extra and slowly fit it than grind too much the first time and go crazy. So you can see after a couple times it starts to get to the point where it'll fit in there pretty decently, and you want it to fit so the roll bar pretty much hits the top of the rear aspect of the cab. So the next step is figuring out how I'm going to make all this fit insofar as underneath. So I'm going to cut the back half off pretty much at roughly where the cab ends. In other words, where I cut the bed off. And what I'm doing is this allows me to keep the front. I'm not putting a crazy motor in it this time. I just want, this is more for fitment. But you can see how that the base is raised to accept the old interior, so I have to grind that fairly smooth because otherwise it won't fit. This takes a little bit of time, a little bit of patience, and a little bit of trial and error just to get it to the point where it'll be flush, but you cut everything off. Just one of those things, just take your time. There's no mad rush, but you'll see as you do it how it'll fit. And I'm keeping it so it'll snap into the actual post itself. And I want to keep the front grille assembly, so pretty much the same thing. I just cut that off where I needed to, and you can see how it all goes together. and it actually works out really, really well, and allows me to keep a nice secure area that holds the entire chassis piece from Benchwerks in there. So since I only kind of half-ass cut it the first time, just roughly, now I'm going to mark it off so that it's even with what I cut off for the bed, and that'll allow me to trim it up just a bit. And I'm just pretty much just using tape to mark off what I need to trim. And again, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. This just so happens to be the way I'm doing it. Again, you don't have to use a cutoff disc. I use it for everything. If you're not comfortable with it, or if you get two left thumbs, don't hurt yourself. It's just one of those things that I feel comfortable using it, so I did. So I'm going to show you the purple windshield. I end up changing it to a smoke-colored windshield. Originally, my thought process, I was going to try to keep it black. I wasn't going to strip it, and I thought the black and the purple actually did go kind of well since there were still flames. But the other issue you run into anyways is when the windshield has a little bit of thickness to it, so you do have to grind away a little bit more of the dash once it's fit in there, just to allow that clearance for the windscreen. It's not much. You maybe take off a 1/16 and just put a slight bevel on it. Nothing outrageous, but it just gives you that little bit of extra clearance to allow that interior piece to sit nice and flush up inside the cab area and not crush the window. So here is pretty much what it looks like assembled, roughly. Obviously I'm just playing around with the fitting issue, which you should do multiple times before you put it all together. Fit it as many times as you feel comfortable that it's going to go back together the way you want it to. So I ended up, because I didn't like the way the flames ended where I cut off the bed, I decided at this point to strip it. So I threw it in my citrus strip for a day. You only need to for a couple hours, but I always do it before I go to bed at night, and when I get out of work the next day, it's already nice and clean. So usual citrus strip, wire wheel to clean out off all the residue that I don't get off with soap and water. Then I steel wool it, and I ended up painting this twice, and I'll go into that a little bit more as time goes on here in this video. But I didn't like the way it came out. There's a lot of casting lines on these. They're cool casting, but there are a lot, and I ended up missing some, and I didn't like the paint ended up chipping when I masked it off. So I ended up going with a second color choice, which actually worked out better anyways. I'm glad I took the time and effort to do it. The second time I probably could have hit it, you wouldn't have noticed, but I'd rather do it right, and that's what I ended up doing. But here, file works well, pretty much along the cab. I missed the one that goes along the front of the hood. So you can do this with a file, you can do it with sandpaper, you can do it with both. Use the file to take off some heavy stuff. Here I'm using my Dremel tool with a 220 grit sandpaper. Just kind of takes the rough edges off that the file can't get, that I would normally hit with sandpaper anyways. So, this stuff like this, when you're dealing with 3D printed parts that are generic to be used with, you can use this on any truck. You can use it on a Silverado even, which actually I think is probably more what it's made for, hence the initial wider aspect of it. But it's one of those things you just got to do a little bit at a time. A lot of trial and error, a lot of fit and fitment issues that you have to deal with, and it's nothing against the part. It's just what you have to do, and it's part of customizing. That should be the fun part of the process, is making something fit that's not supposed to fit. And again, if you just want to do paint and wheel swaps, then that's not something you really have to worry about. But when you start getting into customizing, going more into the realm that this kind of video explains, be patient. That's all. And it's hard for me. I'm like the world's least patient person on 90% of this stuff. Somehow, when I get into the zone on working on these, I tend to develop a sense of patience, maybe because I'm in a different world and I'm forgetting the day and not worrying about anything. I mean, the house could be on fire, I'd still be down there working. So you just zone everything out. But yeah, you got to have some patience and don't try to rush. It'll show in the end. and it's just not worth the aggravation of getting frustrated when you go to put it all together and it doesn't look the way you expect it to. So a little tip of the day is patience. So, but again, you can see how I'm attacking a bunch of, and I still miss something here. So, but I'm attacking all these areas, just trying to get them as clean as I can. The other issue, it's not an issue, which is part of the casting, is the rear needs to be drilled out. You can do this a couple different ways, but since the axle is so small, I drill little pilot holes on each side, more like a starter hole. And I don't recommend this unless you're really good with a drill. I just drill right through. I just kind of take my time. Once I have the guide holes that I made with the pin vise, I just go slowly back and forth a little bit on each side until the two sides meet, and a lot of in and out and making sure that I'm lined up straight. Again, probably not something I would do the first time I'm trying to do this, but I've done it a few times, so I'm comfortable doing it, and it is what it is. So that's essentially what I'm doing there. Now I got some slicks for the back. The axle was too narrow, so obviously I cut the axle, and now I'm just going to fit the pins in and just kind of see where I'm at, how it's going to look. Probably not a needed step, but I kind of like the visual of seeing what it's going to look like with the wheels on it. And then that way I can kind of put everything together and get a good vibe for how it's looking, because it's all about the stance. It's all about how it sits and how it rolls and how it looks. So generally that's roughly what it's going to be. So I'm going to paint. I learned the last time trying to paint all the little details on the 3D printed part. Oh, this is what it looked like. It was like a root beer. It just didn't work. Didn't look good. But I learned last time to actually spray paint the entire thing first, so that way I didn't have to worry about the details that I couldn't reach. So now, after priming it white, I went with the Le Mans Blue from Splash Paints, and that's what you get as far as a two-tone look, and I did the dash as well. I left it matte. So Splash Paints is a base coat, clear coat system. I just wanted the matte finish, so I did not clear coat it. I left it with the base coat only. There's a lot of little detail painting on these, so again, back to the patience aspect, and why I had painted it the aluminum color, because the roll bar was probably the hardest to paint last time, so now I didn't have to worry about it so much. I just had to paint around the roll bar, but it just worked out really well that I had a good base coat of aluminum, so that way I didn't have to worry about trying to hit all those little crazy areas. And it definitely, I would say, probably knocked off 45 minutes to an hour of tedious painting. So now it's just paint the color, whatever you think works. I did the Brembo brakes with my Gundam paint markers. Do the brake drums with silver, which you really can't see on here, but I also did the exhaust with a silver, which is just slightly different than the dark aluminum that I actually painted everything else at. But I do the differential, I'll do the gas tank, I'll do the seats, the steering wheel, all those kind of things. Just take your time. This is the part where you're supposed to have, kind of, I wouldn't say fun. Detail painting, it's hit or miss whether you like it or not. I can't see for shit, so sometimes it's not as much fun as I'd like to have it be. But I've got magnifying glasses and reading glasses and you name it. I've tried it all. So essentially, you just want to whatever works for you. I mean, take your time, have fun with it. This aspect of it should be, whatever matches the truck and what you're after with the theme. So there's just a lot of potential with this part, the 3D printed aspect of it. So you can kind of do, and there's a lot of detail that he designed into this. So it worked out really, really well, that you can go as crazy or not as crazy as you want. So it's up to you. And like I said, I think last time it took me like 2 hours to paint all the little cracks and crevices. This time, because I cheated and found a way to do it better, I probably did it in all an hour. So I needed some tail lights. So I got these velocity stacks off of muscle machines. When you start taking their motors apart, they come apart in parts of two. So I just pretty much gonna cut these in half, and I'm gonna use these as tail lights to go on the back end. I just thought it looked kind of cool. I'll probably, it's hit or miss whether other people will think so, but regardless, I did it already, and they're glued on there. I think it looks just kind of, it just gives it something on the back. It breaks it up a little bit, but to each their own. I just happen to have these kicking around. I thought it'd be kind of cool, something I haven't done before. The slippery little frickers, but other than that, I mean, this was a great build. These are all the parts, you know, ready to go. You can see I already put the front wheels on the front half of the chassis. Really not that bad. If you like what you see, make sure you subscribe and don't forget to ring the bell to get notified of all future videos. This is what I started with. This is what I ended with. Again, builder's choice on not going with the clear coat. Overall, this is the second Benchwerks Toys chassis that I used. Very happy. I was happy the first time. I'm even happier the second time. I definitely, I'm torn whether I like it with the bed or without the bed. But either way, I think I'm out, so I'm gonna have to order another one. But I might try it with a Silverado to see how that looks. So, but give it a shot. I'll have a link down below. If you want, check out the other video of the other truck. That was a two-parter. So I will again have a link down below. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you very much. I got a bunch of photos coming up. Check them all out, and I will catch you on the next one.